The US State Department says it is bracing itself for the latest batch of classified information to be published by the whistleblowing website WikiLeaks. It's thought the leaked documents will include reports from officials in Washington and diplomatic posts around the world. And many fear those diplomatic cables will embarrass the US and its allies about the way they conduct international relations. It may look unassuming, but this site is responsible for the biggest leak of military information in history. Intelligence reports from Iraq and Afghanistan. But now its founders warn many more classified documents, mainly sensitive US diplomatic cables, are to be released. They say this information will redefine global history. The US State Department is bracing itself. In an interview for CNN, the Joint Chief of Staff, Mike Mullen, was asked if this imminent leak would endanger lives.
Absolutely. Not just American troops, but it also endangers the lives of other individuals that we've engaged in our overall efforts, whether they be in Afghanistan or other countries. So I think it's a very, very dangerous precedent. I don't think those who are in charge of WikiLeaks understand is we live in a world where just a little bitty piece of information can be added to a network of information and really open up an understanding that just wasn't there before.
These disclosures could cause serious embarrassment. American diplomats are warning governments across the world about the possible content. The thousands of diplomatic cables are thought to include reports of corruption allegations against politicians in Russia, Afghanistan and other Central Asian states. It's thought some papers relate to the UK. But despite being accused of putting lives at risk, the controversial figure behind the site is not backing down. In October, WikiLeaks hit the headlines for publishing nearly 400,000 logs from American soldiers detailing the picture of events in Iraq. Before that, he published 90,000 classified documents about Afghanistan, information he believes the public has a right to know. The source of the latest documents is not known. However, US Army Private Bradley Manning, a military analyst who was arrested in June on suspicion of leaking classified data, is currently in custody awaiting trial. He's alleged to have abused access to a secret-level network to obtain tens of thousands of State Department cables, some of them classified. Well, in New York now is the former British diplomat Carne Ross. He resigned from the Foreign Office over the invasion of Iraq, and he now runs an advisory group called Independent Diplomat. Do you think the impact of this is really about life and death and danger being revealed, or is it about embarrassment?
One simply doesn't know until the documents themselves are actually revealed. We can't really tell at this point. But I think it's really unclear, both for the State Department and indeed for Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, to say one way or the other that they're dangerous or that they're not dangerous. These things have a particular effect. When information comes out, it will have an effect which perhaps nobody can really predict. How
candid are diplomatic cables? I mean, we've seen in the past, you know, the British ambassador's memo about Obama was a bit embarrassing for the transatlantic relationship. I mean, is that typical?
Yes, it is typical. I think these telegrams are written, certainly in the British Foreign Office, on the understanding that they won't be public. So ambassadors, officials say things that are really very candid in them that you would not find ministers admitting publicly. If these documents come out, if there is a culture that documents like this will be leaked in future, I think that diplomats and officials will stop writing these kinds of things down. That will have negative consequences for the operational effectiveness of government.
I suppose it might also, though, expose the truth about international relations and our relationships with countries that we don't really like to talk about that much.
I think that's absolutely right. I think what the WikiLeaks story shows is the absolute requirement for greater transparency. I don't think we would regard WikiLeaks leaking these documents as legitimate unless we felt that our governments had hidden things from us in the past. And over the last 10 years with the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, I think there is a strong feeling, a public feeling, that the governments have lied to us, have not told us the truth. In these circumstances, what's the answer? Clearly more transparency, more scrutiny, more accountability. When I was a British diplomat, I was never held accountable for what I did. I was never questioned by Parliament, nor frankly by the press, in a way that was actually challenging to me, in a way that actually would have made me held accountable.
Isn't that the point of diplomacy, though? I mean, it has to be, you know, far from transparent. It has to be quiet. It has to be diplomatic.
I think that's the way we've tended to think about it, but I think it could be a great deal more transparent than it actually is. Perhaps there are things that have to remain secret between states, but I think this whole sense that states have business that we don't need to know about, that we should not know about, that is too serious for the general public to be aware of, is actually a bit of a myth. Certainly when I was in government inside the Foreign Office dealing with very sensitive issues, Iraq, Afghanistan, I felt that far too much was kept secret. The vast majority of what we did could be open to greater scrutiny. This doesn't need to be done in an irresponsible way. And I think one of the problems with the WikiLeaks approach is that this vast amount of information is released and we don't really know what effect that will have. This needs to be done in a responsible, managed way through Parliament, through the mechanisms of democratic accountability.
Carne Ross, many thanks for joining us.